Jurassic World may be the one in the box office, but Superman from James Gunn and DC is what all the rage is about, and the press for it is starting to heat up. Which means now may be a good time to remind everyone that there are two groups out there who are desperate to see Superman fail for reasons of their own. One group is a truly shallow, petty, and insidious bunch of scum and villainy. The other are the remaining Snyder Bros. Both of them are, however, working in unison to take down James Gunn's Superman, and we are seeing the early attempts at that already. Strap in, because we're going for a deep dive, and we're bringing receipts. The two groups desperate to see James Gunn's Superman fail because they want to see his entire DC reboot fail are the few remaining hardliner Snyder Bros and the entertainment media complex. Let's see why as we explore each group's motivations, beginning with the mostly harmless one, namely the Snyder Bros. These are the ones who staked an unproportionally big part of their identity into the Snyderverse, and who therefore refused to move on when the rest of the world did, including the bulk of the fans of Zack Snyder's DC universe. Now, I'm the first to admit that the real problem with the Snyderverse wasn't Zack Snyder, but the revolving door of Warner head honchos running DC at different times, because they were the ones who overruled Snyder's initial plans of Man of Steel 2 in favor of Batman v Superman. They wholeheartedly signed off on everything Snyder wanted to do as he doubled down on all the mistakes of Man of Steel. They were the ones who gave standing ovations after he did, but then cut his movie down prior to release and then threw him under the bus big time after the audience rejected everything the executives had enabled and facilitated. Snyder was treated harshly, and Warner probably would have been better off staying the course rather than desperately course-correcting in a panic like they did. Which is not to say that Snyder is without fault himself. As it turned out, he himself hired PR agencies to orchestrate the entire Snyder Cut movement. A movement which was heavily augmented by bots, and when the Snyder Cut finally was released, it underperformed in a big way. And that's when the real Snyder Bros started harassing executives at Warner, and ironically, the ones who made the Snyder Cut happen. But both they, and the ones who both supported and screwed Snyder over back when he ran the show, are all gone now. We are now several generations of executives later, with equally many new iterations of DC tried and failed since then, so Team Zaslav, who are currently running the show and never had anything to do with Snyder, decided on a semi-clean slate rather than going back to what already had failed with the mass audience. That's a perfectly understandable business decision, though some feel the slate should have been wiped completely clean, because things are still connected to the post-Snyderverse by way of James Gunn's Peacemaker. Still, the audience appear to be mostly fine with this, with the exception of the few remaining Snyder Bros. They are not many, but they are very loud, and they are of the opinion that if they can't have their DC, no one else can have any DC either. That's their motivation. And so they have vowed to take down Superman by way of flooding the movie with fake negative reviews, as well as with posting spoilers everywhere online, both real and fake spoilers I might add, but frame them all as negatively as possible, because they want to ruin people's enjoyment of the movie. In other words, they actually intend to review bomb the movie. But unless you are spending an above-average amount of time online in the movie space, chances are you'll never ever encounter them or their influence, which is why I label these guys as mostly harmless. The other group, the one that actually poses a threat to the movie, are the published and accredited journalists and pundits of the entertainment media complex. The very same ones who built up Jonathan Majors as the best thing since sliced bread before his past caught up to him. The very same ones who are doing the same thing with Pedro Pascal right now as we speak, labeling him as the paragon of masculinity that we all should strive towards. and the very same ones that labeled each and every new MCU project since Endgame as the best ever, until the audience rejection was so undeniable they all turned around and suddenly started admitting the projects they all praised upon release maybe had some problems that were obvious to everyone after all. You know, those people. A great number of people in that group want to see James Gunn's DC fail, and they want to see Superman fail to that end. And the funny thing is, it has nothing to do with James Gunn. Hell, they like James Gunn, or they used to at any rate. Case in point, when his past tweets resurfaced and he was fired from Marvel, the media did report on it, but with kid gloves, emphasizing that the rest of Hollywood were all over him. So why do they root for him to fail now? We're about to find out, but first, if you like content like this, please smash like and help share this video. Also subscribe if you haven't done so already, or check that you are still subscribed, because we are getting more feedback from regular viewers that have been randomly unsubscribed without their consent than ever before, as YouTube is clearly up to some tricks. But let's move on here. The entertainment media complex loved and rooted for James Gunn, right up until he accepted the DC gig from David Zaslav. Because it's David Zaslav they don't like. Their dislike of Zaslav is so much greater than their earlier like for Gunn, that they came to dislike him the moment he became a proxy for Zaslav. It's like Elon Musk all over again. It may be difficult to believe now, but there was a time not too long ago when Elon Musk was celebrated as a hero by the left and by the media for changing the world with electrical vehicles and everything. But that changed on a dime when he threw his hat in the ring for Orange Man Bad, as their dislike for him was greater than their like for Musk, and so that dislike carried over to him as well. Same thing with David Zaslav. David Zaslav is the Orange Man Bad of Hollywood, and the entertainment media complex hates him for it. He is an outside force, come in to disrupt their industry and the status quo that they had figured out. And the moment they all turned on him for real was the moment when he killed the DCU. That's right, the DCU. You know how Captain Marvel was an early warning sign of things to come for Marvel? Well, so was Harley Quinn for DC, but David Zaslav put a stop to it. Long-time watchers will of course remember this, but prior to David Zaslav, Warner was ran by Ann Sarnoff, their very own Kathleen Kennedy. And like the activist she was, she intended to do to DC what Kathleen Kennedy had done to Star Wars and what Kevin Feige was doing to Marvel. That is, make it female-centric and more diverse, so audiences around the world could feel seen, validated, and safe to venture into these movies. Because that is the ideological justification, even if it has no bearing in reality. Sarnoff's master plan was to follow up The Flash, the movie which replaced Henry Cavill's Superman with Sasha Calle's Supergirl, with Batgirl, the movie in which Michael Keaton's Batman, the Batman which would have remained by the end of this version of The Flash, would train a diverse Batgirl as his successor, as he was obviously too old, too white, too male, and therefore too problematic to continue in the role. That way, Batgirl would have ended with a DC trinity going forward consisting of Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, Sasha Calle's Supergirl, and Leslie Grace's Batgirl. That's where DC on film was headed under Ann Sarnoff. But then came David Zaslav, and he realized what Kevin Feige didn't, namely that making it female-centric would kill a cinematic universe stone dead. So Zaslav scrapped Batgirl while it was still being filmed, thereby ending the DCU before it could begin. This sent shockwaves through Hollywood and rocked the ideologues to their core. Then, making this even worse, Zaslav did what Bob Iger never had the courage to do with Kathleen Kennedy. That is, he mercilessly and without excuse shit-canned Ann Sarnoff. And then, down the line, he hired James Gunn with the intention of, dare I say it, making DC great again. And quite a few in Hollywood does not want to see that happen, because even if Gunn has been accused of being a bit on the woke side himself, he isn't making DC the all-out propaganda piece that Sarnoff was going to. And since Gunn's success is Zaslav's success, they want to see him fail. They, in this case, being the entertainment journalists and pundits of the entertainment media complex. And you can see their bias in their coverage. Case in point, if a test screening of any random movie gets a few negative reactions, the trades won't even cover it, and this is especially true if it's a Marvel production. The exception is if test screening reports are overwhelmingly negative and already out there in the ether, like with Fantastic Four. Then they'll pay lip service to it because they have no other choice, while trying to run water for Disney as best as they can. But then it's Superman. It has already screened for critics, but it's embargoed for a few more days. The Daily Beast, however, deliberately dropped their full review early, and it was particularly brutal, with reviewer Nick Shager absolutely savaging it and using the highly clickable and easily spreadable title "Terrible New Superman is Final Nail in Superhero Cinema's Coffin." As soon as that title had circulated and been picked up by enough other publications keen to see Gunn fail for the reasons I listed, the review was pulled. Since the embargo hasn't lifted yet, not that it mattered, the hit piece had already done its job, and seeded dozens of more articles spreading the early verdict that James Gunn's Superman is an unmitigated disaster, that you all need to steer well clear of. This, however, is the opinion of Nick Shager. But can we trust that his review and verdict of the movie is likely to be shared by the rest of the movie-going audience? In my opinion, absolutely not. I submit that Shager is biased against the movie and wants to see it fail. Not just because he is a member of the entertainment media complex and likely wants to see Zaslav fail for that reason, but because he is also one of the bitter-ender Snyder Bros. Very rarely do those cross over with entertainment journalists, but in this particular case, such a crossover did indeed happen. Prior to the release of Snyder's Man of Steel, Shager was working for The Atlantic, and at that time, he was carrying heavy water for it. And since then, his social media has been filled with Snyder Bro comments, indicating his eternal allegiance to that cause till the end. So very strategic then, that of all early reviews that could have leaked early, his incredibly brutal was the one that did. And those with a past of being either extremely supportive of Snyder or extremely critical of Zaslav were the ones that further disseminated his assessment of the movie. So, what kind of movies does this Shager like? Clearly not Sinners, he absolutely hated that. But in case you didn't know, the MCU is saved now. You see, he absolutely loved Captain America: Brave New World. A movie most actual viewers despised, yet he declared it the savior of the MCU. And then, a few months later, he declared the Thunderbolts to be the new savior of the MCU, when Iger wanted that narrative out there. So I leave it to you to decide how much you want to trust the verdict of James Gunn's Superman from this corporate Mediaite with an allegiance to Snyder, whose Marvel reviews perfectly aligns with the command intention of one Bob Iger. Now, I'm not saying that James Gunn's Superman is a great movie. I haven't seen it, so it could turn out either way. What I am saying, though, is that any reports you read right now about how bad the movie allegedly is comes from sources with an overt bias against its success. In other words, this is a reversal from the usual state of affairs, where it is the highly curated, positive early reviews that cannot be trusted. But it is what it is, and now you know why. If this analysis was helpful, then please like this video and help share it so more can see it. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe for plenty more analysis like this. Now, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments.